The Scottish National Party wants to force a vote in the Commons this week on an amendment that would call for a ceasefire in Gaza. The Conservatives and Labour oppose calls for a ceasefire, with Sir Keir Starmer arguing for what he calls a humanitarian pause. Now, that's led to a deep division in the party, which could be exposed further by any vote. So, is the SNP playing politics here? Well, the party's Westminster leader, Flynn, joins me now. We'll talk about the politics in a moment, but what do you think this morning means to Scotland specifically, especially the younger generation born, decades away from a global conflict?
Yeah, indeed. I think that remembrance is certainly Remembrance Sunday is something which, for all of us, whether you're in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, England, or indeed further afield, means a huge amount. People sacrificed so much for us to be able to enjoy the lives that we do today, and we can never forget them and forget the sacrifices that they've made. It's a real privilege for me on an individual basis to attend the cenotaph today, and I'll be doing so knowing that my late grandfather, who served in the Second World War, would be watching on with a bit of pride.
Well, I think you're the youngest of the party
Just
leaders.
about.
Yeah, the party leaders. And I'm interested in how this feels to somebody who maybe is in their 30s, why this matters, because we haven't had that conflict in their lifetimes.
In fairness, there has been a significant level of conflict, be that in Afghanistan, be that in Iraq. There is a lot of modern-day veterans whose sacrifice we need to remember as well. Okay. There's members of my extended family who I know have fought in conflict in recent times as well. And, we need to pay tribute to their service, because when they are serving, they're doing so on all our collective behalfs. And that's something which is incredibly important to me and incredibly important to the Scottish people.
We're going to talk to some of those later in the programme, I hope. But now, this week you plan to introduce a motion to Parliament calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. It's not going to pass because Tories and Labour won't vote for it. Is this just a ruse to embarrass the Labour leadership?
No. And, I've heard this implied quite a few times in recent days, and when it is implied, my heart...
Well, it's hard to see what other reason you're doing it for.
Well, my heart sinks a wee bit when people do imply this, because what we have in Gaza is a collective punishment of the Palestinian people. I'm sure everyone watching is aware of the stories which have emanated from Gaza in recent weeks, the fact that there is no food, there's no water, there's no medicine, there's no fuel. And of course, just yesterday we were reading about the fact that babies in ICU units are dying because they don't have access to oxygen. This is a humanitarian catastrophe, and the best way to deal with it is a ceasefire. A ceasefire allows us to uphold international law, to protect civilians and to promote peace. And I think all of us as parliamentarians should want to do that.
But it's clear that the motion's not going to pass, so why take up parliamentary time with that?
So it's been a significant number of weeks now since October the 7th, and the House of Commons hasn't had a vote in relation to the UK government's strategy on this matter. Now, I don't support humanitarian pauses because I think they pose more questions than they do provide answers. What happens at the end of a 4-hour period? Do we simply go back to bombing people but with a little bit more food in their bellies? What happens to the land that they've moved from? Because, of course, Israeli forces are trying to forcibly displace people. And are they going to get that land back? And certainly given what's happening in the West Bank at this moment in time with a very aggressive settler movement, which, as I understand it, is against international law, a lot of us are concerned about that.
All right. Some people would say, cynics, not me, would say that this is partly a way of deflecting from the SNP's own troubles at home, and that we don't need to go over the full thing of motorhomes and 600 grand questions and the police digging up your former leader's garden. But let me just ask you directly, when do you expect the former leader of your party, Nicola Sturgeon, to be charged by the police?
I have absolutely no idea what the police are or aren't intending to do, and they should be able to operate free from the influence of politicians. Now, that's in stark contrast. My view, of course, is in stark contrast to the likes of Suella Braverman, who in recent days has sought to direct the police.
Let's not deflect. Let's deal with your problem.
No, it is important that we have this discussion because, of course, it'd be very easy for me to say that the police are doing something wrong, but the police are independent of politicians and should be allowed to get on with their work free from fear or favour.
Well, we have spent a lot of time talking about Suella Braverman. Let's just deal with you. You are the third largest party in our parliament. You run Scotland. But this shadow is lingering over your party. Mm-hmm. At what point do you expect, then, for us to know what happened. Where did this motorhome come from? What's happened to 600,000 quid? How is this process going to be unfurled?
I can assure you that I would want to know the answers to these questions as much as you do, and indeed a lot of the viewers back home in Scotland would want to know the answer to these questions. I guess my role is very simple. You know, we were referring to, is this me trying to deflect? My role is to try and be the best voice that I possibly can be for the people of Scotland in Westminster. And, you know, next week affords us the opportunity to be that voice, to stand up for international law, to stand up for civilian lives and to stand up for peace. And that's why people send parliamentarians to Parliament, to stand up for their priorities and to stand on their principles. And that's what SNP MPs will be doing.
Stephen Flynn, thank you so much for your time this morning.